Yesterday I talked about one of our dispositions in the Presbyterian world, and that is an appreciation of diversity as a simple fact of life. It's not an ideology, but simply a recognition that differences of all kind are simply a reality in the world in which we live. My intended point had to do with our ecumenical commitments as Presbyterians, but I got a bit into the weeds and never made it past a discussion of diversity among individuals. So today I want to get back on track and talk about what an appreciation of diversity means with respect to our relationship to other Christians. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas. And this is your daily devotional for Friday, September 20th, 2024. We call it ecumenism. Broadly speaking, it refers to the effort to create a sense of unity, though not necessarily uniformity, among Christian churches around the world. Churches with this outlook are generally called ecumenical. Now, in our neck of the woods in East Texas, we see a relatively narrow slice of the whole church. We are dominated by two different kinds of Christian churches, Baptist and Evangelical churches, and to a lesser extent, Roman Catholic churches. There are just a few of what has been traditionally called mainline churches, and we are one of those. By the way, and this is just an aside, but a rather telling one, the term mainline church originated in Philadelphia, where one of the commuter trains which ran from the city center to the affluent, old-moneyed western suburbs was called the Main Line. There were several Protestant churches along the Main Line, including Methodist, Lutheran, Presbyterian, and Episcopal churches. These churches, because of their association with the affluent social establishment in Philadelphia, became known as the Mainline churches, and that name has been applied more generally to churches in these and a few other denominations. Anyway, most mainline churches tend to be ecumenical in outlook. But ours comes from a recognition that while we believe a certain way, we recognize that we could be wrong about a great many things. Other Christian denominations and traditions could be right. Again, as our old friend H. Richard Niebuhr reminds us, there is and always has been a wide diversity of church types. Recall that with respect to the question of the relationship between our commitment to follow Jesus Christ and the many loyalties we have to causes and institutions in the broader culture, there have been at least 5 different ways of resolving the tension between Christ and culture. Many Christians come at these differences by focusing on who's right and who's wrong. Niebuhr didn't come at the question that way at all. He simply wanted to discover why different traditions within the church approached the Christ and culture question as they did. And he began with the simple observation that there has been from the very beginning a diversity of approaches. From his perspective, diversity among churches is as much a fact of life as diversity among people. Since the church is so diverse, therefore, we have done 2 things. The first is to write confessions. When I say confessions, I don't mean statements confessing sins or wrongdoings. Rather, confessions in this sense means statements about what we believe. These statements have been written both to instruct the faithful and to say to the rest of the church and the world what we collectively believe. Think of confessions as an invitation to others to find out what we believe and then enter into conversation with us about our beliefs. Which leads to the second thing we do as a result of the diversity within the broader Christian church. We Presbyterians remain engaged with other Christian bodies from all around the world. We know that we are not the only way of being Christian. We know that there are different ways of organizing churches, from churches with bishops to churches without any hierarchy, from churches that organize as denominations to churches that exist completely independently, from churches that baptize infants as we do to churches that only baptize adult believers, churches that have a very high formal liturgical style and churches with little formal liturgy at all. We recognize that even if we can't agree on everything with other faith communities, we can at least acknowledge them and remain in meaningful relationship with them. We have an ecumenical commitment because diversity within the Church of Jesus Christ is simply a fact of life. And we are better off accepting that fact and learning from brothers and sisters in other traditions than we would be if we cut ourselves off. Tomorrow, we'll talk about how we understand the relationship between salvation and works. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.